Welcome to the Missing Dots. In a world full of emotional slogans, half-truths, and ready-made accusations, the Missing Dot stands alone as the place where we refuse to accept the popular story. We dig into the earliest chronicles, the classical legal texts, the military realities, and the political pressures of the first century of Islam. We show how peace was negotiated outside Basra, how third-party saboteurs destroyed that peace, how Ali, Aisha, Talha, and Zubayr never wanted this bloodshed, and how later storytellers inflated numbers and erased the real mechanics. This is not entertainment. This is a forensic audit. Watch carefully, think carefully, and never again let anyone sell you a simplified version of the Battle of the Camel or any other missing chapter of our history.
You know, it's just sitting here today after prayer, it's hard to reconcile this kind of peace. You know, the courtyard, the quiet.
Right.
Reconciling that with the absolute panic that must have just gripped Medina back in the year 35.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we were looking at a community that was just profoundly traumatized.
Yeah, traumatized is the word.
Right. Uthman had just been assassinated, and the state was literally, quite literally on the brink of collapse.
It's a huge contrast, and I feel like it's that exact trauma that gets, completely lost in the popular retelling today.
No, entirely, yeah.
Because the story most of us hear growing up, it's framed almost entirely around political ambition.
Right.
It usually goes something like, Uthman dies, and then Ali ibn Abi Talib sees an opening and just grabs power.
Yeah, the power grab narrative.
Exactly. And then other companions rebel because they want the caliphate for themselves. It's presented as this very cynical, almost worldly power struggle. But when you actually spend time with these early chronicles and the legal texts, that standard narrative it shatters.
It shatters completely. Because the historical evidence paints an entirely different picture of Ali's mindset at that time.
Right.
When the public in Medina, the companions and the Ansar, when they came to him in a state of sheer terror, begging him to lead, he didn't just jump at the opportunity.
No, not at all.
He repeatedly refused them. His recorded response was essentially, I do not desire it, nor do I ask for it.
Wow.
If you leave it, I will just be one of you.
I read that he even suggested they find someone else and that he would, willingly pledge allegiance to whoever they picked.
Exactly.
That is the complete opposite of a man who is hungry for authority.
Yeah, he only took the position because the alternative was the complete disintegration of the community.
It's just total chaos.
Right, the responsibility was terrifying to him. He viewed the caliphate as a massive divine trust, not some prize to be won.
Right.
So his priority wasn't glory, it was state consolidation. He was trying to put a fractured society back together before seeking immediate vengeance for Uthman.
Which, that actually brings up a really crucial point we need to address early on here.
Yeah.
There is this lingering accusation, sometimes it's subtle, sometimes overt, that Ali or his inner circle were somehow complicit in the assassination of Uthman. Or at least that they kind of turn a blind eye to it.
Right. And the physical realities of the siege of Uthman's house contradict that completely.
How so?
Well, Ali was actively trying to de-escalate the situation. He was out there trying to negotiate with the rebels who had surrounded the house.
Yeah.
And when he realized the mob just wasn't listening to reason and that the threat to Uthman's life was imminent, he took a really drastic step.
What'd he do?
He deployed his own sons, Hassan and Hussein, to physically guard Uthman's door.
I always found that detail just remarkable. He sent his own flesh and blood into a volatile armed mob.
Exactly. And they didn't just stand there symbolically either.
Right.
Both Sunni records like Bukhari and Shia records like Al-Kafi, they document that Hassan and Hussein were physically wounded defending that door.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Hassan took an arrow and Hussein sustained a sword blow.
SubhanAllah.
And when the assassins finally broke in, they came in through the back and killed Uthman, Ali wept.
Yeah.
He publicly and vehemently condemned the killers.
So the sources establish very clearly that Ali is innocent, he is grieving, and he is stepping up reluctantly just to hold the state together.
Exactly.
But then we look at the other side.
Right.
You have Aisha, the mother of the believers, along with prominent companions like Talha and Zubayr, moving toward Basra.
Yeah.
And the popular assumption is that they marched out to overthrow Ali's new government.
And that assumption projects very modern political motives onto a 7th century religious context.
Right.
They were acting out of a deep sense of religious duty, a concept known as ijtihad.
Okay.
They weren't looking for the caliphate.
Yeah.
What they demanded was qisas.
Retaliation.
Right. Immediate legal retaliation and justice for the murder of Uthman.
Yeah.
Because the assassination of the caliph wasn't just a political crisis to them.
Yeah.
It was a profound moral outrage.
Yeah.
And they believed it had to be answered before any government could be considered legitimate.
And this is where the popular narrative starts to feel, well, logically flawed to me.
How do you mean?
Well, if Ali didn't actually want power and he genuinely condemned the murder,
Yeah.
and Aisha's group also didn't want power but just wanted the murderers brought to justice,
Right.
they fundamentally wanted the exact same thing.
Exactly.
They both wanted justice for Uthman.
Right.
So I used to think they just marched out, met on the field, and blindly charged at each other. But if they wanted the same thing, why wouldn't they just sit down and figure it out?
Well, the reality is they actually did sit down and figure it out.
They did.
Yes. The historical record shows they spent 3 full days engaged in intense peace negotiations outside Basra.
3 days.
3 days. This is perhaps the most critical piece of the history that just gets completely erased from the common memory.
Wow.
We refer to these as the parlays.
3 days. I mean, keeping 2 massive, fully armed, heavily emotional camps from clashing for 3 whole days requires an incredible amount of discipline.
It requires immense restraint.
Yeah.
And mutual respect.
Yeah.
The leadership on both sides relied on highly regarded mediators to bridge the gap.
Who were they?
People like Abdullah ibn Abbas and Koke ibn Amir. They were constantly shuttling back and forth between the camps.
Just trying to keep a lid on things.
Exactly. Carrying messages, clarifying intentions, and just slowly lowering the temperature.
I imagine it was a very, very fragile process.
Oh, incredibly.
What was the actual turning point in those talks? Like, how do you finally break that kind of tension?
Well, the breakthrough happened when Ali and Zubayr met face-to-face, privately.
Oh, wow.
It was a deeply emotional encounter. The sources say they actually embraced.
Really?
Yes. And during this conversation, Ali reminded Zubayr of a specific hadith.
Okay.
He reminded him of a time when the Prophet had warned Zubayr that he would one day fight Ali unjustly.
SubhanAllah, just hearing that memory from the Prophet.
It jolted Zubayr completely.
I can imagine.
The moment he remembered that warning, his entire posture changed. He immediately agreed to stand down and swore he would not fight Ali.
Wow.
And following that, Talha also reached an agreement with Ali.
What were the terms?
They were actually quite practical. Talha pledged his allegiance, but on the explicit condition that Uthman's killers would be prosecuted as soon as the state apparatus was secure.
So they basically drafted a phased approach.
Exactly.
First, Ali consolidates the state and restores order, and then a joint judicial process goes after the assassins.
You got it. The treaty was essentially ready to be signed at dawn.
So they had a deal.
They had a deal. They agreed to disarm. Ali's forces would head back to Kufa, and the forces with Aisha, Talha, and Zubayr would return to the Hijaz, to Medina and Mecca.
Okay.
The night before the expected signing, both camps went to sleep in a state of profound relief. The crisis had been averted.
SubhanAllah. It's almost agonizing to think about that moment of relief, knowing what actually happens next.
Yeah, it really is.
It's like 2 heavily armed factions today successfully drafting a ceasefire.
Right.
The diplomats go to bed exhausted but thankful, and then, someone else decides to pull the trigger.
Exactly.
If they had a deal, we really have to look closely at who actually broke it.
Well, you have to look at who had the most to lose from that peace treaty surviving.
Right.
And that leads directly to the third-party insurgents.
Okay.
The extremists, the regional rebels, and specifically the network, often referred to as the Sabahites.
Led by figures like al-Ashtar and Ibn al-Sauda, right?
Exactly.
The people responsible for Uthman's death.
Yes.
Yeah.
And these individuals, they weren't standing off in a separate army camp waiting to be arrested.
Where were they?
They were embedded within the ranks of both armies.
I want to pause on that because I think it's vital.
Yeah.
They were hiding in plain sight.
Right.
I think we sometimes picture ancient armies as very strictly uniformed, separate blocks of soldiers.
Sure.
But this was more like a massive migration of tribes and citizens, wasn't it?
Exactly. These insurgents operated almost like a modern sleeper cell.
Wow.
It is the most dangerous form of insurgency. They were mixed in with the regular soldiers, sharing their fires, listening to the rumors.
Yeah.
And when they realized that Ali and Aisha were on the verge of uniting their forces, they knew their time was up.
Because they'd be caught.
Right. The moment the state stabilized, the hunt for Uthman's killers would begin. They would be identified, extradited, and executed.
So peace was an existential threat to them.
Exactly. Peace meant their death.
So they coordinated a sabotage.
Yes.
But I've always wondered about the logistics of that. I mean, how do you coordinate a simultaneous attack across two different army camps in the pitch black of a 7th century desert without being caught before it even starts?
Well, you rely on the complete absence of centralized communication.
Right.
There were no floodlights, no radios, no flares.
Just darkness.
In the darkest hours after midnight, when the sentries were relaxed because a peace treaty had just been verbally agreed upon, these embedded saboteurs launched coordinated strikes.
Where did they strike?
On the outer perimeters of both camps simultaneously.
And they used psychological warfare to seal the deception, didn't they?
The tactics were brutally effective. The insurgents attacking Aisha's camp were shouting, "Ya Ali," as they killed the guards.
Wow. Making it look like Ali ordered it.
Exactly, making it appear as though Ali had broken his word. And simultaneously, the insurgents striking Ali's camp were shouting, "Ya Aisha!"
That's terrifying. I just try to put myself in the shoes of a regular soldier waking up to that.
Right.
You go to sleep believing you're heading home tomorrow.
Yeah.
You wake up in total darkness to the sound of screaming, swords clashing, and you hear the war cries of the opposing camp. You would absolutely believe you had been betrayed.
There is no other conclusion you could draw in that moment.
Right.
Both sides woke up terrified, firmly believing the other side had launched a treacherous surprise attack.
Yeah.
And once kinetic violence erupts in a pre-modern encampment, the chain of command just dissolves instantly.
That's just chaos.
Complete chaos. By the time the sun came up, the rank-and-file soldiers on both sides were locked in brutal, desperate combat.
It is the ultimate tragedy of the fog of war.
It really is.
You have righteous people, people who genuinely wanted peace just hours earlier, forced to fight each other out of sheer self-defense, entirely fueled by darkness and misinformation.
And the focal point of all that chaos, it became Aisha's camel, al-Askar.
Right, the Battle of the Camel.
Exactly. Because she was the mother of the believers, sitting in an armored howdah, she naturally became the symbolic heart of her army's defense.
Yeah, I've read about this. The camel wasn't just a mount. It became the psychological anchor of the entire battlefield.
Right.
Because as long as the standard is raised, the soldiers feel religiously and culturally obligated to defend it like a fortress.
Exactly. The fighting around the camel was the most intense of the day.
I can imagine.
Wave after wave of men stepped forward to hold the camel's reins, and wave after wave fell.
So sad.
Ali quickly realized that as long as that camel was standing, the troops would just keep sacrificing themselves.
Yeah.
So to stop the bloodshed, he issued a direct order for his men to hamstring the camel.
To strike its legs so it would fall.
Right, so it would fall safely to the ground.
And once the camel fell, the fighting finally broke.
Yes. Once the psychological anchor was removed and Aisha was secured, the active combat ceased.
Okay.
But the tragedy was already cemented.
Especially when you look at the leadership.
Yeah.
Zubayr, who had honored his word to Ali, he wasn't even in the battle, was he?
No, Zubayr had walked away entirely. He was honoring the peace.
Right.
He retreated to a nearby valley called Wadi al-Siba to pray. And while he was in prayer, he was ambushed and assassinated by an insurgent named Amr ibn Jarmuz.
Wow. And Talha.
Talha was struck in the leg by a rogue arrow very early in the confusion of the night attack and bled to death.
So the two men who helped forge the peace are dead, the community is deeply fractured, and the battlefield is quiet.
Yeah.
I've always found the immediate aftermath of this battle to be the most, well, baffling part of the history.
In what way?
Well, in almost any other late antiquity empire, whether you look at the Romans or the Persians, if a ruler puts down a massive rebellion, the losers are subjected to horrific punishment.
Oh, absolutely.
They're executed for treason, or their families are enslaved, or their wealth is looted.
Right.
But Ali does something entirely different here.
He does. Because how a leader reacts after the swords are put down reveals their true legal and moral framework.
Right.
Ali's post-battle conduct was revolutionary. He didn't just show mercy. He formally established what Islamic jurists now call fiqh al-bugat, the laws of internal conflict.
How does that framework actually define the opposing side then? Because he clearly didn't treat them as apostates or traitors.
No, not at all. The legal definition of the conflict became qada ijtihadi, a sincere human error in judgment.
Okay.
It wasn't framed as a moral corruption or a rebellion against God. It was recognized as a tragic error in political judgment forced by third-party sabotage.
Wow.
Ali rooted his actions deeply in the Qur'an, specifically chapter 49, verse 9, which commands making peace between two groups of fighting believers.
Fighting believers. So both groups are still explicitly recognized as believers.
Exactly. That's the crucial point.
So how did that translate to the actual rules of engagement on the ground?
Well, it was strict.
Because how do you enforce mercy on an army that just watched its own brothers die in the sand?
By issuing absolute, non-negotiable decrees that completely upended traditional warfare.
Like what?
Ali forbade his men from chasing anyone who retreated.
Okay.
He outlawed the execution of any prisoners.
Wow.
He explicitly banned the taking of ghanima, or war booty, meaning no one was allowed to loot the fallen.
Really?
Yes. And he completely outlawed the enslavement of any captives. He stood before a victorious, grieving army and declared, "This is not a war for spoils, but a tragedy among Muslims."
He's telling a victorious 7th century army they get 0 spoils.
0.
That takes immense moral authority to enforce.
His personal grief really set the tone.
Right.
When Ali walked the battlefield and found Talha's body, the sources describe him personally wiping the dust from Talha's face.
Subhanallah.
He wept openly in front of his men, saying, "I wish I had died 20 years before this day."
That's heartbreaking.
And then he personally led the funeral prayers for the fallen on both sides. He prayed over Talha and Zubayr.
He prayed over the commanders of the opposing army.
Yes.
And his treatment of Aisha, I mean, he didn't just send her away, he organized a massive escort.
He treated her with immaculate state protocol.
Right.
When she was ready to return to Medina, Ali provided an elite guard of 40 noble Basran women.
Okay.
To ensure her absolute safety and protect her modesty during the long journey, these women were actually dressed in male military garb.
It's devastating to think about her grief afterward.
Yeah.
I've read that she spent the rest of her life weeping over this tragedy, and whenever she recited certain verses of the Qur'an, her veil would just be soaked with tears.
Yes, the remorse was profound.
But that profound grief actually highlights a massive contradiction in how we remember this event today.
How do you mean?
Well, if both sides were weeping, if the battle was brief and defensive, and if everyone reconciled immediately afterward,
Right.
where did this popular image of a premeditated massive bloodbath come from? I mean, you hear numbers today claiming tens of thousands of casualties.
We are dealing with a severe case of historiographical distortion.
Okay.
The early, reliable historians, like Khalifa ibn Khayyat, along with modern logistical analysis, suggest the actual casualties were likely around 200 people.
Wait, 200?
Around 200.
But the numbers thrown around in popular lectures are often 10,000 or 20,000?
Right. But let's look at the mechanics of early warfare.
Yeah.
A chaotic defensive skirmish triggered by a night attack, which effectively ended a few hours later when a camel fell, cannot logistically produce 20,000 dead bodies.
Just doesn't add up.
It doesn't. If we compare this to actual massive historical battles, take the Battle of Yarmouk, that involved massive imperial armies clashing for days and resulted in roughly 3,000 Muslim martyrs.
Wow. Okay.
Or Qadisiyah, which saw relentless, organized combat over several days, resulting in about 8,500 martyrs.
So mathematically, 20,000 dead in a 3-hour skirmish outside Basra is a physical impossibility.
It is entirely impossible.
And where did the numbers come from?
They were artificially inflated by later dynastic chroniclers during the Umayyad and Abbasid eras,
Okay.
as well as by Kufan scribes and oral storytellers. The numbers started at 10,000, grew to 20,000, and some exaggerated accounts eventually claimed 30,000.
It really comes down to political utility, doesn't it?
Exactly.
If you are a later authoritarian ruler trying to justify an iron-fisted dictatorship, it serves your agenda to look back at the early caliphate and say, look how chaotic and bloody it was when they tried to govern themselves.
Right.
You need our harsh rule to survive.
That is exactly the mechanism of the propaganda.
What?
To make that binary good versus evil narrative work, and to make the early Muslim community look inherently unstable, the later storytellers had to erase the truth about the peace treaty.
Right, because peace ruins the narrative.
Exactly. They deliberately erased the night attack sabotage because a nuanced story about a complex tragedy caused by an embedded insurgency doesn't serve a neat political agenda.
No, it doesn't.
It is much easier to manipulate a population when you simplify history into massive, hateful factions fighting for power.
It is incredibly sobering. I mean, a few hours of darkness, confusion, and sabotage, followed by decades of deliberate storytelling, can completely rewrite the legacy of people who sincerely wanted nothing but justice and peace.
Absolutely.
It really makes you realize how vital it is to understand the actual mechanics of our history. When we study the sabotage, the miscommunication, the fog of war, and that revolutionary mercy shown afterward, we aren't just memorizing facts, we are learning how to heal historical wounds.
Well said.
And inshallah, understanding how this manipulation happened in the past can stop us from falling for similar ideological manipulation today. To rebuild your mental peace and legacy today, give charity, sponsor a student, and plant a tree. May Allah grant us success. Don't forget to come on, let's just go. Don't forget to follow this channel, The Missing Dots. Thank you.